Welcome to the Who Says podcast. I am here today with my good friend Scott and journeyed together for about 4 years now. Scott and I met in the recovery rooms, 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the most memorable things I remember when we first met was Scott always talking about, I want to be unflappable. I would say today you're pretty unflappable. We have some stories, some funny stories about your flappability at that time, but you had a mindset of where you wanted to go. You had an idea of where you wanted to go. And I think that unflappability was really saying, I want to learn how to be in the flow of life, get rid of the authority in my mind that you and I like to talk about a lot of times. And so I would like to dig into kind of where you started and how you got to be Unflappable Scott. So your story entails jail, it entails prison, it entails homelessness, but it also entails 2 business degrees from SU.
2 graduate degrees.
You have owned homes. You've had a very successful career in Fortune 500 companies, and you ended up homeless as the result of alcoholism. And your story is pretty amazing. And I think it's very inspiring, right? Because most people who end up homeless, in prison, in jail, don't end up in the position that you're in with the mindset that you have and the spiritual, physical, emotional understanding of life, reality. And so let's talk about kind of what that looked like as far as kind of the horror of your past, if you will, right? With jail, prison, and all of that, homelessness. And then what led to the moment, if you will. Many of us have moments that we wake up and we stumble into them. It's what we wanted, but I don't know that we were able to create that awakening.
So it's June 18 of 2014. I had just received my 8th DUI. And I knew I was looking at a lot of time. And what ultimately happened was I left the state of Arizona and went to Nebraska and found myself in a very similar situation in Nebraska where I was without shelter and in a place I'd never been. I knew nobody. And for years I'd been trying to get sober. I really had. To no avail. And so fast forward from July of 2014 to September 6th of 2017, I'd had enough. I couldn't figure it out. Life was miserable. I was all out of answers. And we hear this in the rooms of recovery all the time. I was all out of answers. And so I went into treatment, which would be the last time. I got heavily involved in recovery in the Omaha community. Still have all those friends that I knew back then. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to Omaha here in 2 months and go see them again. I go out there once or twice a year. But it was sponsorship in Omaha that probably had the greatest impact on my life. And everything was so layered and gradual. But ultimately what happened is I eventually had to face coming back to Arizona to clean up that DUI, which was then, by the time I was considering cleaning it up, 7 years old. Now, I had been sober for several years, running a treatment center in Omaha, putting one of my graduate degrees to work. And I knew I was looking at a lot of time, probably 4+ years. But I was in a position emotionally where I was in acceptance of that. And ultimately what wound up happening is I came back to Arizona. Prior to leaving, men that I had sponsored, men who'd gone through the treatment program, and just friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, they all got together and provided me with 21 letters of how I had impacted their life.
Wow.
And I brought those with me. And it was a cumbersome process to turn oneself in. It wasn't what I expected, but it eventually happened. And the product of those letters had a significant impact on my sentence. Instead of getting 4 years, It was 8 months on a program yard, and I'll never forget my first arraignment. My attorney didn't show up, and this is how synchronicities work, right? He sent a friend of his who was a private attorney, and she showed up, arraigned me, and turned around to walk out of the courtroom. And I said, "Can I ask you a couple questions?" And she said, "Sure." I said, "Who's going to represent me?" And she indicated that the same individual who didn't make it that day would still be my attorney. And I said, "I've got some letters that I brought with me. Can I show those to you?" And I'll never forget her response. She was very dismissive. She's like, "Those never work. Judges don't want to hear people plead for mercy." And I said, "They're not those type of letters." She said, "Well, what type are they?" And I said, "Well, they're more about how I've impacted their lives. I've been involved in Alcoholics Anonymous." And I laid some things out. And she said, "Do you have those with you?" And I said, "I have them in an electronic file." And she said, "Please send those to me." So I did. And it was a couple days later, I received a call from her, and she asked me if I could meet her down at the courthouse. And I said, "Certainly, why?" And she said, "The judge and the prosecutor would like to meet you."
Wow.
I didn't know what was going on. No. I was a little nervous, quite frankly. Anyway, we got down there, and we went into the judge's chambers, and everybody went into her chamber. The prosecutor came out about 20 minutes later, and he sat down right next to me with a big old smile on his face. And he said, "Son, in my 26 years of prosecuting, I have never seen anything like those letters." And he said, "I wanted to dismiss the charges, but my boss laughed at me." He said, "That boy's got 8 DUIs. He's got to do some time." Oh, there were actually 9 by this point, but that's all that showed up on their record. Anyway, he said, "So how about 8 months?" And I said, "Where do I sign?" And so that was the start. That was the start of a journey that has taken me places I never could have scripted.
So what pushed you to basically self-surrender and come and clean up the wreckage? Was that Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah, it was Alcoholics Anonymous. Things were confusing at the very most in Omaha, and my sponsor had suggested it was time to probably go back and clean this up. And he was right. He'd never given me a bad piece of advice.
I think most people would run from that, because how many years did you say it was? You had avoided it for 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah, I think most people at that point would not clean that up. But what a weight off your shoulders where you didn't have that in the back of your mind anymore, eating at you.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't get a driver's license back. I was a fugitive. I had no driver's license, felony warrants, no contact with my son.
Right.
I would have done the 4 years. It was time. I was at that place where it was just time to clean it up. I was in acceptance of it. I didn't necessarily like it. There was some fear involved, but.
So what was it like going into prison already sober, already having some spiritual healing that you'd done in your life and work? And I assume you were already reading a lot of the spiritual books that you were, or no?
No, not at that point. No, only the recovery texts.
So what was it like going into prison with where you were in your life at this point, and what opportunities presented themselves while you were there?
Well, the first thing I did was get involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I started going to meetings, chairing meetings, and sponsoring people. And
you sponsor somebody still that you met in prison, right?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride watching his life change, and I'm so grateful to be a part of that. Prison wasn't so bad. I always tell people, for me, it was like an enclosed vacation. I was in recovery. I was running every day. I was reading books and working out, and I minded my own business.
It's a nice gated community.
It was a gated community.
You had private chef and everything.
There you go. And I mean, you've heard me say this. I wouldn't change anything in my life. Everything happened in the exact sequence it was supposed to. And that going to prison, next to my alcoholism and going to prison, are the two things in life that I value above everything else. So many really cool things evolved from that stay in prison that to this day have been life-changing. I'd go back and do it again.
That's amazing. So when you got released from prison, what did you do?
Well, initially I was planning on going back to Omaha, but again, my sponsor suggested that no, I think it's time that you foster that relationship with your son. He's at that age where you need him.
And it had been how many years that you were not present in his life?
You know, I was absent most of his life, but there were 9 solid years where I had almost no contact with him. So,
and today, what does that relationship look like?
We have a really good, healthy relationship. We get together every Saturday. He's a ton of fun. And I just enjoy being present with him. I don't have to control what he does, what he says. I listen. He is the easiest person in the world for me to be with because just who he is. I can just be with him and I'm totally good. And I know he enjoys his time with me. So
that's awesome.
It's been a real blessing.
That's beautiful.
I'm grateful for it. And it's exactly where my relationship with him is precisely where it's supposed to be. You know, I've never missed a day. I never make excuses. I'm never too busy to not go pick him up. And I'm proud of that. I mean, I'm present today. I cannot change the past, nor do I want to, because all we have is the eternal now anyway. So I make the most of the time I have with him.
That's awesome. So you have a relationship with your son today. Mm-hmm. You have what you told me prior to us sitting down to this, your dream job, which is unbelievable.
Who would have known?
You went from homeless to dream job. No longer homeless either. I know you spent quite a few years in sober living, quite a few years too, as the result of your DUI terms with a breathalyzer in your car. Also carless. When I met you, you only had a bicycle and now you have a vehicle, your breathalyzer is gone, you have your dream job, and you have a home that you bought just a few months ago, which is amazing.
Who would have guessed?
So what was so Alcoholics Anonymous is not the only avenue that you have taken in your life to achieve sobriety and a level of mental clarity as well. What are the other avenues that you've taken?
I don't know how to articulate it. It's been a spiritual journey. And I didn't pick it. It just happened. And you've heard this story several times. But for those listeners who don't know, when you go to prison, you get tablets. So you have a way to communicate with people on the outside. Now, you don't have free access to do exactly what you want, but there's podcasts and programming and messaging and things like that. So one day I received a message from my sponsor. And the message was very simple. Now, you got to remember, when you get a message in prison, you're kind of excited.
Right.
And all this message said one day was, I think you need to think about enlarging your spiritual life. And I didn't even know what to think about that.
What was your spiritual life at this point? What did that kind of look like?
Well, I sure thought it did.
Yeah.
I look back now and I think it was pretty pathetic. Yeah. It was all ego-based. I didn't pray. I didn't meditate. It was weak, to say the least. It was an area of opportunity that somebody else saw because I couldn't see it. I was blind to it. And as I shared a few minutes ago, he's never given me a bad piece of advice. So I immediately considered it. And I sat on the edge of my bunk. I looked over on my shelf and there was the 12 and 12, the Alcoholics Anonymous study guide for the big book.
The 12 steps and 12 traditions.
12 steps and 12 traditions. So I opened it up to step 11 and read it differently for the first time.
And what is step 11?
Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him or understand him. And I sat there for a couple minutes, and I don't know where this came from, but the thought occurred to me, I wonder what sought really means. And I walked over to somebody else's area, and I grabbed a thesaurus, and I opened it up to sought, scanned through it, and the first definition that jumped off the page to me was to hunt, pursue, or forage for. And I remember like the breath went out of me, and I thought, Scott, you've never hunted, pursued, or foraged for any relationship with a higher power.
But you did with alcohol.
I did.
That was your higher power,
That was
right?
my higher power. And I made a decision at that moment that I was going to learn how to meditate. And all the same excuses went through my head that I hear other people say today. Oh, I can't quiet my mind down. The thoughts just keep coming at me. We believe what we think. But what I did is I started waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and sitting there quietly on my bunk. And very quickly what happened in a matter of weeks, I went from not being able to listen or sit quietly for 20 seconds to 20, 30, 40 minutes. And it became a habit. And I started to see results from it. Things didn't bother me like they used to. I didn't feel stressed like I used to. These attributes that were starting to occur that as I listened to podcasts from Joe Dispenza and others on meditation, they were discussing. You're calmer. Your mind the thinking starts to slow down. It all started to happen. And I'm like, I like this. And so I kept doing it.
You started to become unflappable.
A little bit. There are people in my life that would dispute that claim.
It was the very baby stages of it.
Yeah.
So what's so powerful about that, and I'm big on intention, is the fact that it became a conscious and intentional action for you. You weren't just drifting unconsciously through maybe what you learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, or even maybe some of the experiences that you'd been through in life. You consciously sought the definition of sought and took very conscious and intentional action. And I'm sure you'll agree with what I'm about to say, but that's what it takes to wake up. And once you begin to awaken, you can't continue sleepwalking through your life. You can't go back. It seems like everything becomes more and more and more intentional, more and more conscious. All the things I say, the things I do, even my thoughts become more intentional and conscious.
Well said. I remember at first it was all about how much time can I meditate for? And
right.
I've got to do it for 30 minutes or 40
minutes. It's like a competition
with myself.
Yeah.
But what started to happen was I started to get some clarity. My thinking began to slow. I began to see things a little differently. I wasn't terrorized by fear, worry, anxiety like I used to be. And so I just started to enjoy my time in the morning and before I go to bed. And I haven't missed a day yet. But instead of it becoming a necessity for time, I do it today for as long as it takes. I could meditate for 5 minutes. It could be 35 minutes. I do what I do until I'm done, but I enjoy it. And sometimes I meditate throughout the day while I'm running. I mean, that's been an incredible source of meditation for me, the walking meditation while I'm running.
I love that you said that, because oftentimes, I know when I started to meditate, I didn't recognize that meditation wasn't just sitting there with your legs crossed. It can be done anywhere at any time. One of the best forms of meditation that I have found during the day when I can't close my eyes is just to focus on my breath, because it slows my nervous system down, and then I'm able to focus again. I'm able to think clearly. Oftentimes we go throughout the day and we get into a frightful situation. We don't even know we're afraid in that moment, but what happens unconsciously is you begin to stop breathing. You tighten up. Fight or flight kicks in. Now you can't think clearly. And every thought that comes into your mind is real and true. And the boogeyman is about to get you.
Well said. That's what the Buddhists call proliferation. What people in AA call catastrophizing. That's one of the most beautiful things. There's this gap between what's called contact. You see something, right? You have contact with it. Then the very next thing, this all happens in milliseconds. The very next thing the mind does is it decides whether it's pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neutral. It's doing this on its own without me thinking about it. Then the very next thing is it's the reaction to it. Oh, this happens. This always happens to me. And the second the mind makes that judgment, it's a story. This is how we experience reality. Then the proliferation starts. Oh, this always happens to me. Nobody likes me. I'm never going to get out of this. It's always going to be this way. But there's that nanosecond between recognition and because it happens with the body before the mind even catches. The body recognizes us, that we can stop, we can interrupt that. And it's one of the things I'm working on today. And it's a challenge. I had a few moments today. I think it was because I was thinking about it. Because anger is still an issue with me. I don't care how calm you are, how enlightened you believe you are, or awake you are. The body still does what the body does. The mind still does what the mind does. And I have to be conscious of that. We come in and out of this.
It's less, though. I
Less.
mean, the more you practice intentionally becoming, I like to call becoming a curious observer of yourself. I was a judgmental, I wouldn't even say that I was an observer, because observation is an openness. Observing is an openness. But what I did for most of my life, and I'm still guilty of it today, I'm not perfect, is judgment, opinion. I need this to be good or bad. And when you observe, you step back. So it's practice, 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 practice. And you and I talk about that a lot. It doesn't happen overnight. It's just every day I'm presented with opportunities to either fall into the trap of the obstacle or fall into the openness of the opportunity. I resist or I allow. But I would say one big thing that I know you and I both do, and quite a few of our friends as well, is I will not allow myself anymore to be like I used to be, very like, oh my God, can you believe this? Can you believe that they said that? Can you believe that that happened? And that's very victim. And I don't allow myself to do that anymore. I just, okay, that's how it's going. What can I do about it? Step back and observe it. I don't have to get wrapped up in the unbelievability of a situation.
You're going to the heart of each of us does not experience reality objectively. We are actively creating reality. And so to understand that our judgment comes from conditioning, how we were raised, school, siblings, community, church, language, nationality, all of this stuff conditions each of us in a different way. And we experience life through those filters. And that's why two people can experience the same event, but have two radically different responses or outcomes to it based off of our conditioning. So we do not experience reality objectively. It's two people floating down a river in a raft. One person is floating down the river, encounters a rock and gets really frustrated. Why is this rock here? This rock wasn't here yesterday. It's in my way. It shouldn't be here.
Operative word, shouldn't.
Should not be here. Yet another person comes down the river, the exact same river, and encounters the exact same rock and says, oh, look, a rock. I think I'll go around it. The exact same event, two completely different realities. And that's why we don't experience reality objectively. We create it. Think of this countless times a day. So the next question is, how do you affect that? Awareness, learning to become aware of what's going on. The more aware one becomes, the easier it is to see through our lifetime of conditioning.
Well, I think it's one thing to become aware, but what do you do with that awareness? Because you can be aware and not do anything with it. I mean, I think that would be very difficult. It was for me when I started to wake up and that fog was gone. I was no longer sleepwalking through my life. And even though I wanted to unsee everything I was seeing because it was very different, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't go back. But I do come across people who are quite aware of themselves and yet unwilling to do anything with that awareness, who stay very stuck in victim and almost as though they use their awareness to feed their ego. I would say something I know that you have done is use the awareness to release your ego more and more and more, to become more in tune with the divine, more aligned, more synchronized, to be in equanimity.
You said it a minute ago. Once one sees through the fog of the mind, once one develops clarity, you can't unsee what you now see. You can't go back. It's like being in a magic show in Vegas, and you watch the rabbit get pulled out of the hat, the woman gets cut in half, and the card you pick mysteriously winds up in the envelope, right? But then somebody shows you the mechanics of how that all happens, and suddenly the magic show has lost its luster. You can't unsee that. You know how it's done. That's what it's like.
Like, I used to be very into politics. I was very conservative. And a lot of that was rooted in my upbringing. I was quite political. I had a lot of opinions about religion. I had a lot of ideas about the government and the way it should be run. And now I have no opinion on any of it. I do not watch the news. I don't pay attention to politics. And as far as God is concerned, I have a God of my understanding today, and it's probably not one of the majority. And that's okay. But that's what it's about, is not going along with the rhetoric of everyone, but stepping back and observing, why is everyone so invested in this rhetoric when at the end of the day, that's not even what really matters.
Yeah, you and I have a lot in common. My life has been so much more peaceful, not knowing what's going on in the world. I still hear about things, but I have no interest in that. It all lost its weight. One of the coolest thing about awakening for me was, first of all, I look back now and I know it had been happening for years, but there was a certain event that occurred. And it was shortly after that, maybe about a month after that, I had one of those epiphanies where I thought, wow, none of the stuff that used to cause me pause, my dysfunctional relationships, my fears, scarcity, things like that, I didn't solve any of them, but they all went away. They lost their weight. And I thought that in itself was cool. I didn't solve any of it. They just lost their weight.
Well, and what's neat about that is, on a deeper level, you were no longer attracting it because the energy that was attracting it was no longer there. And that's what's really neat about all of this too, is you think that I got to go do this and that and I got to push this person out and that person. But what actually needs to happen is the inward deal, the inward shift. Because as I began to shift as well, my life opened up and I was no longer attracting the people into my life that I had previously attracted. I was no longer attracting relationships, romantic and otherwise, that were no longer aligned with me. I was aligned in a different way. I had been aligned with fear for so long. I was always attracting those types of relationships into my life. Non-intimate relationships, disconnected relationships. So when I used substances, I felt quite connected to people. Oh, you're my best friend, man. And then the next day I'm like, this person. I don't really want them in my life. And yet misery loves company. So now I have the most intimate relationships that I've ever had in my life. And intimacy is not just about sex. I have deep connection. You and I, you're one of my best friends. We have deep conversations. It's not about the world. It's about our inner world. And as far as romantic, I have one of the most intimate relationships with the most loving man in the world. And I shout that from the rooftops because it's something I dreamed of, but never thought I would get because I didn't think I was enough or worthy or deserving of that. And I know you actively kind of choose not to be in a relationship. And I think that's awesome as well.
Isn't that cool? I'm whole. I'm perfect the way I was made. I love my life. I'm missing nothing. I want for nothing. And not only that, I have more than I could ever dream of. And like you, have some really deep, meaningful relationships that I absolutely value and nurture. But what's funny is you talked about attraction, right? Not only do we not attract them anymore, the folks that are vibrating on a different wavelength, they don't like being in our company. And I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And not only that, there are people in my life that don't understand what's happened to me. And I'm under no obligation to explain it to them because I don't want to explain it. You know, to wake up is burdensome. It's not some flashy, enlightened state. There's a lot of changes that one goes through that you have to learn how to adapt to, how to have conversations with people. Superficial conversations do zip for me. I have no interest in it. Some people don't feel comfortable around me anymore, and I'm good with that. I love them just the same.
And that's a cool place to be too, because I personally had difficulty being around people that I knew may have issue with me. That was very difficult for me. And what's funny too is, I don't know if you were ever like this, but I wouldn't like the person, but I still wanted them to like me. I'm okay if not everybody likes me. I don't expect everybody to like me. And I'm okay that there's some people that maybe I don't vibe with either. And what a cool place to be. And I don't have to have an opinion about them. It just is what it is.
You and I talk about this all the time. There's nothing about anything that I've gone through that I think is superior to or better than. It just is what it is. Was to see the suffering in everybody.
Yes.
You could look into everybody's eyes and see the chronic thinking. You can see the worry, the anxiety, the fear. And I could just, overnight, compassion became effortless because I've been that. I can sense it.
No, it's connection. I remember exactly where I was the first time I looked around and saw how scared everybody in the room was. I was sitting at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous a few years ago. And for the first time ever, I could see that everybody was just as afraid as me. And my ego had told me for years that I was alone in that. And yet I wouldn't tell you I was afraid. I had to posture as though I had it all together. That was my safety. Don't let anybody know you're afraid. And yet that's the part of the problem is most of us are walking around totally afraid and yet so scared to say anything that we posture and put up this mask and this wall and we become imposters. And the crazy thing is when you finally admit that, you can connect with people.
It all falls away.
And it's pretty wild. Like my eyes were open in a whole new way and it's just continued. It's been just awakening after awakening after awakening at quite a rapid rate. Because you and I have talked about this a lot too, how we've some of our journey has been quite on the same path. Mm-hmm. The most common things we have that has been a part of our journey is Alcoholics Anonymous. But yet we took a little, like very different paths outside of that and yet still came to the same place. So that's pretty neat too. About the same
time. Our meeting was no coincidence. And that's why I value my friendship with you so much. I want to go back because you asked me that question that I didn't answer. So I started that meditation process. My life got better. I started reading books from Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, Paramahansa Yogananda. And then I stumbled into books by Neville Goddard and Alan Watts. And that's when things really began to shift for me.
And Joe Dispenza also,
Joe Dispenza,
right? Yeah, was a big one for you.
I read all his books. I watched a lot of podcasts or listened to a lot of podcasts in prison. And then I read just about everything when I got out of prison. And the product of that was just an accident. All I was looking for, I liked the effects of meditation. I loved how I felt. And everything else just kind of accidentally came along as a result of that. I wasn't looking or striving for any of this, but it happened. It was an accident. I didn't even know what it was.
It's funny because somebody said to me recently, I stumbled into everything that's ever happened into my life. And I think we would like to believe that we made everything happen that's happened in our lives. But when I honestly take a step back and observe, it's like I stumbled into everything. I haven't been able to pinpoint exactly what it was that began my awakening. There were a multitude of events that happened. But I always say this, the pain of staying the same became too great. And for whatever reason, that first layer came off and I came out of my slumber and I was no longer sleepwalking.
And you couldn't unsee it.
I couldn't unsee it. It was terrifying.
Yeah, you know how the rabbit's pulled out of the hat now.
I know. Well, I'm still working on that, but I'm still seeing that the magic trick is playing and I'm not buying into it as much anymore. But it's almost like an addiction now. I'm not going to lie, but it's a healthy addiction if there is one. But I have to be careful. I'm sure you can agree with this, that it can be very easy to create separation once again from the world when you journey in this way and you awaken, and now you can accidentally create an us and them type of deal where I see things differently than them. And it can be very subtle. I know it all. I kind of went through that phase of I got the answers, like sit down and shut up without even meaning to. And it was very subtle. I didn't even see it, but it took somebody very close to me saying like, you kind of have this know-it-all energy. And I'm like, no, I don't. I am grateful that I stepped back today and afford myself the opportunity. Like the Fifth Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz says, be skeptical, but learn to listen. I'm a little skeptical when people criticize, but yet I want to listen and see like, maybe do they have some validity? So spiritual pride is a very real thing. And it's a very subtle thing. I think Eckhart Tolle talks about it.
Especially Alan Watts. Alan Watts talks about the spiritual seeker. It's just another version of separateness. It's just the ego. It's actually the last avenue the ego has. Now I'm a
sweet at the end.
I'm a spiritual seeker. And so I realize that. And that's why I say there's a burden that comes with this that people don't understand. And so if somebody were to ask, then why would you want it? Well, first of all, I didn't want it. I didn't know it existed. But more importantly,
you didn't know you wanted it.
I didn't
know. You
wanted
wanted it, right?
But life, I've learned to be present. Meditation for me is all about becoming present instantaneously. And in the instantaneous presence of the now is joy. It's bliss. It's not bliss as in, I just got what I want. It just happens. And I can sit still 5, 10, 20 minutes and just feel it. And it's so cool. It's a neat place to be.
One of the things that I want to make sure we talk about that has me really excited right now, because you and I are both in this same space, is recognizing deeply what we've read about in all of these different books about the authority in the mind. And I cannot preface this enough. It is one thing to read a book. It is another thing to take what you read and see how it applies in your life and take that action or allow it to manifest, right? Action is not always an outward thing. Action can be being still. Stillness is this form of action. And so I feel like my head popped out of my ass this week in the last 7 days or so, probably less than that. And my brain popped a little bit. And I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about with being identified with your thinking and it running your life, it being the author of your life, right? The root word of authority is author. And so whatever you are allowing to have authority in your life, it is now authoring your life. It is creating everything. And it is so subtle. I mean, down to it tells you what to eat, what to wear, which way to drive, what to say, what to do, what energy you want to experience. But when you step back and you observe it, something wild happens. Really observe it and detach from it to no longer being identified with it. I was like, I mean, it was running a story in my life of good or bad, and I didn't even realize it. I mean, it's just so wild.
Everything. I mean,
Everything, like a robot.
From the minute you open your eyes till the moment you close them. Like, dislike, judge. It's always like, dislike, judge.
It's good, bad, right, wrong.
Right, wrong. I mean, it's the duality of it, and it never shuts up. Remember, I'd say I've got an off switch for my mind.
I used to roll my eyes. I'm like, okay, Scott.
Yeah, I love how you say you say some things. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't know about that one. But
it's great because it's like where you want to go. You have an idea of where you want to go.
And it's not that I have an off switch. And again, you've heard me say this. Silence isn't the absence of thought. It's the moment thought loses its authority. And that's where I live today. I live in this place where the clouds aren't the sky. They form out of the substance of the sky, and they're constantly changing. Thoughts aren't me. They're formed in the substance of my mind. I can't control them. I'm not them. They come and go. And so even in those moments of what I call stillness and silence, I'm still watching them go by. All the same crazy stuff. But I'm not the German Shepherd chasing the Frisbee anymore. I don't follow them. I do occasionally, but then I can just let it go and come back to where I'm at. And so the mind never stops, ever. But I'm not identified with it anymore. I can use it when I need it and put it away and just watch it go all day. It's not the author of my life anymore. And that may be the single greatest benefit of all of this. It doesn't take much to identify with one's thinking, right? Because the body reacts first. The body has memory. You see something that's fearful, the body reacts. You can't control it. It just reacts. Then the thinking follows. And again, that's where everything's at now. It's to catch myself in that gap between contact, the body doing what it does, and before I react. And learning how to let go of that stuff instantaneously has some major spiritual and psychological ramifications, positive ones. I don't turn on the radio in my vehicle. I don't go home and turn on a television. The mornings when I drive in, I love getting in the car and getting in traffic because I have clarity. I can just sit in the stillness and be totally good.
I've used traffic big time. Now I don't mind it as much. I've used traffic as a way to hone in on accepting what is. Do I want to be in peace, or do I want to create irritation within me over something I have no control over?
Traffic's probably the best teacher.
And the story running in the background is, this is bad. I have somewhere to go. This is bad. And when you become aware of that and step back and observe that, then you can let go of that story.
For years, I told these stories, and I believed them about who I was, where I came from, what happened to me, all of this just crazy nonsense. And I have to think about it today to remember what I used to tell, because I don't know that I have a story anymore. As you know, that athletic side of me, I no longer identify with that. It's something I get to do to take care of my body today. And so I'm in this place where it's just nice to just be. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I have no need for recognition. I can sit in an AA meeting and be perfectly content just sitting and listening, because I spent my whole life needing approval.
By the way, Vic and I love looking over, and we smile every time because we always look over and you're sitting there just eyes closed in complete meditation in the middle of a meeting. I love that.
I went to a meeting the other day and had my eyes closed, and I was just chilling. And then I heard something and nobody started speaking. And there was just like dead silence. I opened up my eyes and everybody was looking at me. And then I looked down and there was one of our members, and he was like shaking his head.
But can we clarify why you can't hear half the time?
Well, I can't hear.
Right. Because you're deaf in one ear?
It's challenged.
Yeah. It's challenged.
It's crippled. I needed you to know how I got sober, who I was, how much education I had. I mean, I glossed over everything and left out the prison and the arrests. I only told you the good parts, right? But that's how life was. I was delusional, as most people are. We tell stories because it provides continuity, who we are, where we came from, what happened to us, and most importantly, why we're like how we are, as if we actually know why we're like how we are. I had no more idea why I was like how I was. It was karma, which could be a whole nother episode. Karma not being the cosmic, a deity punishment. That's not what karma is. Karma is our ingrained habits, beliefs, reactions. And it was my karma that caused my life, and I don't know where it came from. There are 8 billion of us that have 8 billion different types of karma.
And who knows how many times you've reincarnated. And we don't just carry our own karma, we carry generations
karma.
How can you be to blame for anything when you were born into this life with much of what you have? And really, I mean, on a deeper level, there was no choice until you became conscious. You're unconsciously driving down the road angry at traffic or angry at the person driving like a jerk, and not realizing that you have a choice in how you want to respond to that. It's pretty wild.
Mind-blowing.
Everything is a story. But the difference is, and you said it, you're no longer identified with the story as if that was Scott. That was a version of you, but that isn't you. That was a version of your choices, unconscious or conscious. It seems that the conscious choices you have made in your life had led to freedom, while all of the unconscious choices that were made led to incarceration, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. You're alluding to the greatest illusion of them all, the separate self. If I think back to being 7 years old, there seems like there's been this perfect flow of continuity. It's still the same me, but yet I've been a dozen different characters over the course of my lifetime. But I have to actually look and analyze and see each one of those, but it still seems like me on the inside looking out. But that's the greatest illusion. I've come to know that the sack of bones and skin and organs that was given the name Scott at birth is just a process, like everything else, constantly changing. I am aging. My beliefs constantly change. My habits change. My thoughts change. My emotional reactions change. Nothing about me stays the same from today to tomorrow. But yet, it's me. We speak about I, but who is the I? There is no solid I back there. It's like a candle flickering. It's a process. It looks like it's staying stable, but I'm just a process. And knowing that we're all like that is liberating, because I don't have to identify with any of that stuff anymore.
It's funny, like people who have seen the picture of me when I was 245 pounds, they go, "Who was that?" And I say, "She wanted to be me. That wasn't me. She wasn't me."
That was, you felt like that was you at the time.
I did. And even afterwards, I felt like it was, because I was quite identified with the idea of how did I get to be that way? And once I healed that story and changed that narrative to have understanding and compassion for that part of myself, that it couldn't have gone any other way than it went, now I'm no longer identified with that. And I actually am just proud of the steps I have taken to realize who I truly am, what I truly am. Not even who, but what I truly am. Because what I truly am is a spirit. It's beyond my conception. I don't even understand at this point, but I know it to be true, right?
You don't have language for it.
You just know it to be true.
Is the wave separate from the ocean? The wave is nothing more than the ocean expressing itself at that point, at that particular moment. It's no more separate from the ocean
Then a fish is separate from water.
We're just the universe looking out at itself from this particular point that was given the name Scott at birth. We're not separate.
So it's interesting because you and I recently talked about this. It seems to be the hot topic of conversation in my life right now, and it's where I am. I think where you are as well. We've taken all these steps to get to this place. I had to create habits in my life. I became very fixed on working out, very fixed on my nutrition, very fixed on my meditation, very fixed on my spiritual life and prayer and what that looked like and contemplation. And you go along, right? And I'm going to just say it. AA was very beneficial for me. It was a starting point, right? These are all starting points, but none of it is meant to be a staying point. And I think that is, we're looking for freedom, right? We're looking for freedom. We look for it in books by people that we see who have achieved freedoms. Joe Dispenza, Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, Deepak Chopra. I could go on and on and on. Alcoholics Anonymous offers a sort of freedom. Religion can offer a sort of freedom. But then what happens is you get stuck in another box and you get restricted to if you are not aware of what is happening, right? You become identified now with this program, identified with this book, identified with this teaching. And there I am, freedom slipping away from me. And that's all I really want. And so it's like there's an evolutionary process, right? So there is a process where you almost do have to get into these sort of habits and these rituals. But then it's also an undoing process where, yes, meditation is a part of my life, but it's not so fixed, right? Working out is a part of my life, but it is not so fixed. It is free flowing. I have non-negotiables in my life. These are things that I absolutely are things that I do in my life because they are beneficial, but I'm not so fixed on when they have to happen. So it's interesting because it's like you're undoing things in the beginning and then you're allowing and then you're undoing again. It's kind of an undoing constantly and just allowing the evolution of change to happen instead of being so fixed in this sort of safe space.
Well said. It's the illusion of permanence. Nothing's permanent. Everything's changing at all times. And what causes most people so much trouble is the clinging to either aversion, things they don't want, or things they want. And when recognizes that everything's changing, life becomes effortless. The really cool thing that you just described was all the rigidity that happens to develop the habits. And then if one's lucky enough, you let go and just allow everything to flow. It's in the allowance that life really begins to deal joy out. Nothing ever came from control. Control is nothing more than fear masquerading as responsibility. I love people that it's about their dysfunctional relationship with uncertainty. And here's the thing about human existence. It's inherently uncertain. No matter how many issues you consider, you can't consider them all. It's like trying to guess where a leaf that falls off a tree is going to land. There are a million variables. And then they do what you just said. They create a prison that they live in. They can't handle anything, any uncertainty, because if they quit planning, life is going to fall apart without their planning. All the joy in life comes from uncertainty. At least it has been that way for me. And so
I'm grateful for everything that didn't go my way.
I love that.
That's okay. I really am. You used to say that and I kind of tilt my head like, I don't know about that. I get it now. Everything that didn't go my way led me here, right where I am.
I wouldn't change any of it.
The problem is that I want it to go a certain way. And I can't give up the fact that I think that my safety lies in the way that I think it should go.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, control offers the illusion of safety. It's a mind construct. It's not even real. But what it does is it really provides contraction. And if you want expansion, You have to let go. And let go is, again, it's not something you strive for. You just allow. You just allow.
It all of a sudden starts to make sense. So there's the movie The Creator. It's a pretty cool movie. And in it, they're traveling. They're in this futuristic world and they're traveling. And this robot thingy says, "What is your purpose of travel?" And the robot child says, "Freedom." And I'm like, yeah. And that's what I've come to believe is what my purpose here on this planet is to find ultimate freedom through forgiveness and to be guilt free. Guilt is like the thing driving everyone. It's so deep. And so if I understand that my purpose in this life, or however many lives I come here, I'm here right now. So my purpose in this life is freedom. What does that look like? And if I start looking at my life and I go like, do I have real freedom in my life, or am I restricted by fear? Am I afraid to let go of my political views? Am I afraid to let go of the God of my understanding? Am I afraid to question the things that I think I believe? If I'm afraid of all of that, then I don't have freedom. I'm restricted. Am I afraid to question what life is, right? What is the meaning of life? Those were questions that came to me at a really dark time. It was born out of desperation. My mom had died. I was divorced. I was in the worst relationship I had ever been in. And I'm like, what's the point of life? What is the purpose of any of this? But those two questions were like massively deep and huge for me, because then I was like, well, what is it? I don't think it's me sitting here smoking this meth and and getting beat up by the guy I'm doing it with and causing absolute heartache and just sheer confrontation and despair in the lives of those around me and push everybody away. I'm not sure that is why I'm here. I'm pretty sure I'm here to offer a lot more than that to this world. And the journey kind of began. But those are big questions. Anytime I feel a tinge of pull, oh, I can't ask that, I can't say that, I ask myself, why? Who says?
Who says? It's conditioning.
My mom said. My mom said I can't wear that. Or my dad said I can't say that. And when I start to question those things, man, a world opens up. And it's freaking scary at first, but it's so very worth it and very, very necessary. I think what's scarier is people who live lives that are good enough, because I think it's harder to break out of good enough than it is to break out of desperation.
I never thought about that.
Because why would you ever question your life if it's good enough? You got money. Maybe you don't have a real addiction problem that anybody is really giving much attention to. Addiction in any form, you can become addicted to your thinking. Most of us are. I can become anything that is outside of me. When I reach outside of me because I don't like what's happening inside of me, I would say is an addiction, and it's a connection issue. The opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite of depression is expression. So addiction and depression go hand in hand, because you're lacking the ability to express, which in turn creates disconnection.
We talk about, most people intellectually get that nothing out here can make me happy. They understand that the world can't make you whole. Most people in recovery get that nothing outside can provide long-term satisfaction, but they don't live like it. They say that, and then in the very next sentence they say, but when I get the raise, the girl, the house, car, new job, go on the vacation, things will be better. And it never works. And there's a reason why it never works, and that's because the future doesn't exist. The future is a present moment experience. When you're imagining something, where are you imagining it? You're imagining it right now. And it's the same with memory. Memory is a trace. It doesn't exist. Not only that, and we've talked about this, it's a reconstruction. When do you experience a memory? Well, you're sitting right here, right now, in the eternal now. And so most people spend their entire life in the future or in the past, almost no time present. And so what I've come to understand, and you're welcome to disagree with me, is the meaning of life is very simple. It's not out there in the future. The meaning of life is to just live it in the unfolding moment right now. I was out pruning the tree in my front yard the other day and loving and just filled with joy. I was just present, trimming my little bushes and my tree. I mean, what a gift it is to be able to do that. But that's the meaning.
I love that for you.
That's the meaning of life. I mean, does the oak tree have to grow taller than the next oak tree? Mm-hmm. Or the flower have to bloom brighter or have more colors than the next flower? No, they exist according to their nature. Our nature is to just live. But everybody thinks there has to be some grandiose meaning. There's some trophy or finish line, and it never arrives. And I think once I realized that it doesn't exist, life became effortless. I had a friend ask me recently, you got this great job, you love it, what's next? And I said, well, what do you mean? Can you get promoted? Can you do something different? I'm good right where I'm at. Why do I need something more? More is not better. And that, again, goes to the illusion that anything out here is going to make me okay. If you're lucky enough to achieve some material goal of some sort, the mind goes on immediately to the next one. There's no lasting satisfaction. Everything's done inside. If you're not comfortable where you're at, you won't be comfortable anywhere. And I'm comfortable right where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Now, I know things are going to change. I don't know how they're going to change, but they're going to change. So I'm just going to enjoy the unfolding moments until they do, because it's been a pretty good ride.
The rhetoric that really helps me with that, because the unknown can be a very scary place, but the rhetoric that I share with myself when that starts to happen is it's all happening for my benefit. It's happening for me. Where the rhetoric I used to have was, why is this happening to me? And now it's, okay, these are opportunities. These aren't obstacles. They're opportunities. And they're not always fun. Change is not always fun, but it is a necessary part of life. So how adaptable can I be? And how open can I be to allowing whatever transpires as it comes to me?
Words allow.
The big thing is changing just the wording, right? The wording. I get to instead of I have to. For me, not to me. Just those little shifts can help tremendously.
The mind is a meaning maker.
Right.
And it assigns meaning based off of our conditioning. Once that illusion is seen through and you understand that what you're experiencing is no more real. I mean, we laugh about this. It's the Matrix.
So this is what'll really tickle your pickle is when I found out what is the meaning of life, and I heard life has no meaning. You give it meaning. I'm like, but no, there has to be meaning. Like, there's got to be a point. But again, back to the point is freedom. Vic likes to use this analogy that we're all in a video game. We're in a simulation and you can work with it and level up and allow life to give you what you need to reach freedom.
I like that.
When you kind of look at it like that, it feels a lot more fun. Because I have found it way more beneficial to be playful with life, to be so serious about it. Growing up, life was quite serious in my home. And I've had to really forgive that. I've had to change the stories and the meanings I've given those events and recognize that, man, my parents were doing the best that they could. And they did do a phenomenal job, but they missed the mark in a lot of ways. And I know I'm missing the mark in a lot of ways in my parenting. And so we get the opportunity to change some of those things. Our children will get the opportunity to rewrite a lot of the stories that we couldn't see. That's how it goes. But it doesn't have to be so serious.
Well, I'm so grateful you brought this up because the universe is inherently playful. I mean, galaxies are spinning, stars are exploding,
We live on a rock.
and we march like soldiers who must grow up. You go through 12 grades, get a job, get married, have a life. It's insane. And one of the things Alan Watts always spoke about was life is like a dance, or it's like listening to a piece of music. Can you imagine saying, hurry up, go to the very, very last note of that song. I just want to get to the end. No, the whole point of listening to music is to hear the melody. And it's the same with our life. It's perfectly analogous. I just want to get to the end. For what? There's no trophy. At the very beginning of this, you and I spoke a little bit about a little bit of history, right? There were 20 plus years of really bad times, or what I thought was bad.
Very difficult.
Very, very difficult. And not one of them would I change. Now, I have some people in my life that would say that was irresponsible. You don't understand. It got me where I'm at today. Everything happened in the perfect sequence, and I see that now. I can look back with clarity and almost giggle. I mean, I think about some of the most horrifying times I had, dangerous and horrifying times.
This is what's wild too, is when you realize that your life is already accomplished, you just haven't realized it yet. And there are 10 million, trillion, a bazillion different ways that it could go, but it's always going to end up in this one place. How freeing is that?
Totally liberating.
You cannot do anything wrong, that sin doesn't even exist.
It's a man-made construct.
It's just your experiences, but they're all leading you to the same place. Why would you take it so seriously?
We all march like soldiers with this solemnity. It's dubious solemnity. It's
interesting
nuts.
too, because if you really look at, I feel like children are asked to grow up too soon. I know in my home it was that way. I knew how to set a table formally by the time I was 5 years old. Proper etiquette. I think maybe there's benefit to that. I don't know. I don't see any real benefit. It's another man-made construct. I'm getting looser and looser with my children. I find myself doing the same sort of things, and I'm like, I feel very restricted when I do it too. I'm like, eat over your plate. Don't spill your food. Da, 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 da. And then I'm like, God, what am I doing? I hated that when I was a kid.
And then your daughter gives you a little bit
saying that?
Who's saying that? Whose voice is that?
It's not me. If I think about what I would have wanted when I was 3 years old, and I'm sure there will be people that be like, you don't know what you want when you're 3. No, that is the most authentic version you will ever be. From birth to probably 3-4 years old, you are unrestricted. That's the most authentic version you've ever be. If you can think back on that and envision the way you acted, that's freedom. And it's like, we had that, we lost it, and now we're trying to remember it. That's kind of the steps. It's just, so I really look at that and I'm like, I want to let go more and more and more. I don't want to be restrictive. Okay, I get to clean up after my kids. One day they're not going to be sitting there making a mess, and I'm going to be like, oh man, I wish they were here making a mess again. They make for great stories. So.
Oh, what a fun ride it's been. There's something that's important to note, and that is there are those that might think, well, living that way, it's a little too passive, not having goals. And that's not what I'm saying. I still have goals. The big difference is I'm not attached to them. I can pivot instantaneously. Maybe a new direction needs to be gone to. I can move in that direction because I was brought to that point to recognize that I need to go in a different direction. Holding on to arbitrary goals like, I have to get a PhD. It's important to get a PhD. I thought getting 2 graduate degrees was really important. I look back now and I think, what was I thinking? It was just nuts. But
it's interesting that you say that, because that's also something that I've recently come to realize. And it goes back to adapting with the sort of habits that we got into in the beginning of recovery. For instance, I went to this personal growth workshop, and they're big on goals, 30-day goals, SMART goals. They need to be measurable
specific,
and risky.
Measurable,
yes.
All that stuff.
And I was like, okay, cool. And it kind of got me a little fired up, but I could feel myself kind of resisting it. Like, this isn't in line with everything I've been learning in my spiritual teachings. But I did it. But what I noticed as I observed myself in that 30 days was this level of rigidity and frustration that I had in my home, and actually a level of disconnection from my family because I was so fixated on achieving a 30-day goal. And they call me up and they go, "Hey, did you reach your 30-day goal?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And they're like, "Okay, what's your next 30-day goal?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just leaning in to the goal that I just achieved and seeing where that takes me." That's mind blowing to the ego. The ego wants achieve, prove. My goal was this podcast, to get that up and running, to record an episode. And I did those things, but now I'm just leaning into it. I'm allowing what transpires. I'm not trying to force it. I don't have to post every single day. I don't want to be so rigid in these sort of goals that now my freedoms are gone. That now I'm creating conflict in my home, agitation with my kids and my partner and my friends. So there is a way to have the sort of dreams that you have without creating rigidity and conflict within your life.
Who says one goal after another is the way to get where you're supposed to go?
Absolutely.
That implies that we know where we're going. I, for 60 years, thought I knew where I was going, and all I went to was jail, prison, sober homes. I mean, it was horrible listening to myself.
You went to a sort of hell.
Join us in heck. It's like hell, but a lot more fun. I love that. When I let go of rigidity and control of everything, everything got better. For example, when I quit the rigidity of my training and my running improved dramatically. And it's hard to explain. I just let go and it got better. I quit getting injured. I ran faster. I'm starting to have some negative effect of 60 years of running on my knees. I can't run 70 miles a week anymore. But I realized not only that, it's more fun. Love it.
Because I'm the same way with my exercise. I was really fixed on, I have to exercise and this is my schedule. And it was like difficult to enjoy. And now if I don't get to walk 3 miles and do 30 minutes of weight training or an hour, I'm okay with that. What is the cost of the rigidity? It's not that I don't do it. I still very much do it. I'm still active every day. It's that it doesn't have to be a certain way, though. I'm not so fixed on that. And I actually find myself enjoying it. And that was something I don't know about you, but like as a kid, everything was serious. Sports were serious. I played very competitive fast pitch softball, and it was serious business. I didn't know I was allowed to enjoy that. I played violin. I didn't realize I was allowed to enjoy that. It was like I had to be the best. And it was so confining. But that's where I found love from my father, was in being the best.
You're lucky you learned to let go of that.
Oh, God, yes. I feel so fortunate. And I don't condemn my father or my mother. They were doing only what they knew how. And I know that they love me very much. We're all doing the best that we can. I say it all the time. The freedom I have found is in forgiveness. Forgiveness and compassion, and constantly questioning the fear when it comes up and saying, who is saying this? Is this real? Fear would tell you don't question it. And I didn't question it for a long time. And I drank over that. And I used drugs over that. And I did it over the stories and the authority in my head. And it authored my life into the depths of hell. And the more I release all of that, the more I question it, the more I say, who says, the more I find heaven.
If you would have told me 20, 25, 30 years ago that I would love rolling over and waking up every day and just navigating each day, I would have told you that you were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Love waking up. I love it because I'm not attacked by my mind.
I've recently come to a place finally where I'm not waking up like, oh God, what's going to happen today? I feel different. I think it's because I'm not trying to force the way my mornings need to go. And that was difficult for me to let go of. I had an idea of how I needed my mornings to go because they had gone that way for many years. And then a shift happened. And now I've got a little girl in my life that I'm caring for. And she's impeding on my meditation time. and then there's the conflict between, like, I love being her mother and having her in my life, but then also I need my meditation, and right? The stories were conflicted. They were not aligned. And now they're very much aligned. Now it's like, okay, I can have both worlds. It's just going to go a little different than I had envisioned.
You and I met, we've become friends and gone on this journey, and you're in this beautiful relationship with a really cool dude who I think the world of. And I think I'm single, right? And again, everybody's not as different, and it's untied differently. If you had told me that I would be in a position where I'm not lonely and I never feel alone, I wouldn't have known that. I needed to go from relationship to relationship my whole life, and I attracted some pretty, and participated in some very dysfunctional relationships. And to be at a place where I'm just so okay by myself, never is there a minute where I feel alone or lonely. What a gift. And I have great friends. I've got a brother who he and I are connecting deeper than ever, and I'm grateful for my relationship with him. We went up to the Four Corners in Arizona to see Monument Valley, and we were in the hotel room. I'd been driving all day. It was 9 hours of driving. I'm tired. I wanted to put in my AirPods and just meditate and go to sleep. And I finally shared that with him. I looked over and said, hey, I'm going to meditate and go to sleep. And I did. And the next day we were driving. He goes, hey, man, can I ask you something? And I said, sure. He goes, tell me about this meditation stuff. And I said, okay. He goes, last night you said you were going to put in your AirPods, meditate, and go to sleep. And I said, yeah, and I did. He goes, but you were just laying there.
Isn't that what you do?
One minute you were conscious and the next minute you were out. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I thought you were going to like sit on the floor, Indian style. No. And I got such a kick out of it. He goes, can I do that? He's having challenges sleeping. And it's like, yeah, just turn off your mind, meditate, and go to sleep.
Yeah, just turn off your mind.
Just turn it off.
Super simple.
You've heard me say this for years. I sleep like I'm in a coma. What a gift, because there were decades where I didn't sleep at all.
I used to be on sleep medication.
Yeah. I mean, I was diagnosed as bipolar. I still have somebody in my life that thinks I'm bipolar. That's okay.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, I too had that experience. I was diagnosed young with that. I'm not bipolar. I am quite opposite of that. Sure. I don't have sleep issues today. I fall asleep less than 5 minutes, stay asleep for the most part. I wake up rested. I don't need as much sleep anymore either, which is pretty miraculous. Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming on here and sharing your journey.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Who Says. If you really liked what you heard, it resonated with you, and you think somebody else could benefit from it, please share. And we will see you next week.